Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Metaverse. Just kidding. You're live here on the DisrupTV show. We're going to do some quick introductions in the green room and definitely not talk about what happened this week. No, lots of stuff going on this week, lots of excitement, but we've got three awesome guests. We're super excited to have them here. And more importantly, we'll do some intros in reverse order. I'm going to ask you where you're calling in from and what you're talking about. So we're stuck with John, Alec, and then go to David. So go ahead. John.
Hey, everybody. John Westra. I'm calling from Pure, Michigan, which Ray will hold up a map for us soon and show you where I live. And I'm going to be talking about the Metaverse. We've all been hearing a lot about it, so I'm going to throw my 2 cents in.
Awesome. All right. Alec.
Hey, everybody. I'm Alec Ross, and I'm calling in from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'll be talking about the raging 2020s, countries, people, companies, and the fight for our future.
Whew, little book there, book plug up there. All right, cool. David, what are we talking about? Where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I'm calling in from Sedona, Arizona, talking about the new world of remote and hybrid work that is the new normal and the emotional side of the workplace.
Wow, this is exciting. Well, hey, we're going to find out more. We're going to kick it off soon. And Elle, please do the honors. So,
all right, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guests your questions live using hashtag DisrupTV, and we'll do our best to answer them during the show. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody, I keep saying Disrupting Digital, your last book. Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Surviving and Thriving in a World of Digital Giants. He's a regular television, business, and technology news contributor on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, and Wall Street Journal. In my opinion, he's one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. And I'm honored and privileged here to be here with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar, the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence. Amazon is behind. I've been waiting for my copy for months. Executives around the world must pay attention, and he often pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. And when he's not keynoting or leading an event at Salesforce or speaking on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg, he's posting insightful analyses, often about this show on ZDNet. So, but it's not about us, as we often talk about. It's about our awesome guests. Who do we have to kick it off today, Val?
It's an honor and a privilege for us to have Alec Ross. He's one of the world's leading experts on innovation. Author of New York Times bestselling The Industries of the Future, Alec is currently a distinguished visiting professor at the University of Bologna Business School and a board partner at Amplo, a global venture capital firm. Alec was a distinguished senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University and senior fellow at the Columbia University School of International Public Affairs. I knew you would give you a hoo-hoo for that one. During the Obama administration, Alec served as senior advisor for innovation to the Secretary of State to help modernize the practice of diplomacy and advance America's foreign policy interests. Alec also served as the convener of the Technology and Media Policy Committee on Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign and on Obama-Biden presidential transition team. Alec is the author of a new book, The Raging 2020s, Companies, Countries, People, and the Fight for Our Future, which is about the collision that has taken place at the intersection of government, business, and citizens. His prior book, The Industries of the Future, has been translated into 24 languages, and it's been bestseller on 5 continents. He's a must-follow on Twitter at Alec J. Ross, R-O-S-S. Welcome, Alec, to DisrupTV.
Thank you for having me. This is a real pleasure. This is going to be fun.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely.
It is. We're super excited to have you. And one of the interesting things is you wrote a book about the raging 2020s. The 2020s didn't kick off the way we thought we were. We're all talking about, hey, the 2020s awesome. But you know what? There's a lot of interesting insights in there. And you know what? It's actually all panning out to be true in a very, very interesting way. What inspired you to write the book, and really what caused you to say, hey, we got to do this now? And there's some really interesting points to build upon many of the concepts from the last book.
Yeah, look, what drove me to write this book was a question. Is this decade going to finish up with the world looking more like Mad Max or more like Star Trek? I mean, Mad Max or Star Trek, but a more utopian future or a more dystopian future? And I've spent the last handful of years studying basically that question. And the 2020s have gotten off to a kind of a tricky start with a global pandemic and with political violence. And sort of the conclusion that I came to is whether the future looks more like Mad Max or more like Star Trek is entirely up to us. And so I wrote the book to sort of lay out some scenarios for us.
There's a dual connotation to raging. You could have the pessimistic lens. I have an 18-year-old who's a freshman in college, and she thinks the future is going to be amazing. So it's going to be fantastic. So the opposite connotation to raging. What is your thought in terms of projecting the next decade? Do you have an optimistic point of view in terms of your research and your experience?
Yeah. So first, thanks for pointing out that dual connotation. And I've got a 19-year-old son, and just the word raging. The word raging to my 19-year-old is an implicit positive. It's like it's like a great party.
Raging. Let's go.
It's raging.
It's a
Yeah,
rager.
like woohoo. But for a lot, the older you get, the more you sort of get clenched up when you hear the word raging. The God's honest truth is it is an optimistic book. I think, look, only optimists change the world.
Yes.
Only optimists change the world. And there's a difference. You can be optimistic and realist. So I'm an optimistic realist. I do believe we can shape the future in a much more positive way, but we can't be passive about it. And I do think that part of what's holding us back, part of what is producing some of the negative rage right now, is this almost outrage competition that seems to take place so often. It's like, who can be the more pissed off and the more witty about being pissed off? Like, there's a whole, this seems to define a lot of journalism and a lot of social media right now. And I try to provide a little bit of a counter narrative to that. There have been times of incredible destruction in the past, but it makes me recall the words of an artist, Pablo Picasso, who I think understood innovation as well as any technologist, who said every act of creation begins with an act of destruction.
Yep.
And so I hope that coming out of the destruction of some of what we've seen at the beginning of the 2020s, it gives us an opportunity to rewrite our social contract a little bit, to not just be in cruise control, but to think headed in a single direction, but to think about the direction we want to head in, to recognize that we have agency. What the future looks like is actually up to us. We are protagonists in this. We aren't in the back of the car. We're driving the car. And so given that, we can and we should be optimistic.
I love how the book starts off. You talk about companies change our lives. The state takes down companies and the people takes down the state. And there's a cycle that's in place. And what we've seen over the last, I've been writing a book about digital giants and duopolies, right? That's my last book that Vala was talking about. And it's weird. Individuals have so much power if they want to now, and companies have so much power, and the state has so much power. And the question is, like, where are these battle lines going? And you set up the framework. And I think it'd be good for people to start understanding, like, what is that you're trying to talk about in that contract that's being rewritten, that's being reshaped as well?
Sure. It's an equilibrium. We all want an equilibrium. So we want companies to do what they do best. We want governments to do what they should be doing and do best. And then at the end of the day, we want democratic consent. We want all of this to flow from the will of the people. Let me geek out just a little bit on history for like 30 seconds.
Please.
So this reminds me of a period from 1800 to 1840 when technology wildly reshaped the world. And we had this thing called industrialization, where work went from farm to factory. But for 40 years, we didn't really rewrite our social contract. This was the industrialization of the Charles Dickens novels and 11-year-olds losing their hands in the factories. What did that lead to? It led to the largest wave of revolutions in history. It led to ideological movements like communism. The Communist Manifesto was written in 1848. What we did, Ray, and what we did, Vala, is alongside all of this technological innovation, we innovated with our ideas. So we said, you know what? Yes, you can work in the factory, but we're going to create the world's first ever child labor law. Instead of 11-year-olds, we're going to have 16-year-olds. We're going to create the world's first ever minimum wage. We're going to create this concept which has only been around for 150 years, guys, called a weekend, where instead of just having Sunday off to go to church, you get 2 days off. A concept called a pension. Hey, work in that factory for 25 or 30 years, and at the end of it, you're going to get this thing called a pension. All of these were intellectual innovations. But here's the thing. Vala's got, did you say an 18-year-old, Vala?
Yeah.
I've got a 19-year-old. Your 18-year-old, my 19-year-old, they're most likely not going to get pensions, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to have a single employer for 30 years.
Right.
Nope.
And so but if you think about it, a lot of those things from the 19th century are still the intellectual base of keeping everything in equilibrium. But Vala's 18-year-old and my 19-year-old aren't going to get pensions. So we need to take our intellectual movements from this 19th century industrialization mindset into a mindset oriented toward the 2020s. We need to be creative and imagine and invent the reality of a technology-rich, knowledge-based economy as opposed to an industrial economy.
Absolutely. And I look forward to more innovation in labor space, because we want to reinvent ourselves and have these, incredible introductions like the weekend and minimum wage and age limit and so on and so forth as we think about the future. Now, thankfully, my 18-year-old has Coinbase and she's trading on about 30 different coins. So,
yeah.
So I'm like, go.
My son is Mr. Robin Hood. So I get it.
Right,
Right. Yeah,
awesome.
my son is Mr. Robin Hood. These kids are off to the races. They're like, yeah, congratulations for your success, Dad. But I'm off to the races.
Yeah, right. Oh,
we're going to the digital future. We're not going to live in the.
She's leaving me in the dust. In fact, she's on the blockchain club at Bentley University, and the amount of insights I get, early insights before the tokens even make it to Coinbase, is pretty phenomenal. But that's a whole other show. But I'm telling you, we're in good hands.
Yes.
And I hope that my daughter and your son and students get to read your book, because you do inject optimism and you guide them in a way that I think I want my children to be guided in the future. A little bit of history lesson. You talked about the mid 1800s. Let's go to a little bit after mid 1900, about 1970, I believe. I think it's about 51 years ago, the seminal moment in business, where Milton Friedman wrote an essay in New York Times Magazine entitled "The Social Responsibility of Businesses to Increase Its Profits." And this doctrine precipitated a whole new era of short-termism, erosion of protection of employees, environment, and some of the rage may be that companies really adopted that doctrine in a big way. My Twitter feed, just in the last week, 400 wealthiest U.S. billionaires paid an average income tax rate of 8%. That's less than teachers and firefighters. You actually mentioned in one of your speeches, our barista had paid more taxes than the entire company of Starbucks.
That's right.
Which is mind-numbing to think about. Today, we announced 4.6% unemployment rate, but only 61% of the workforce is participating. So does this talk about the great resignation? Because there's about 11 million open jobs. I think it's the most open jobs we've had in recent history. And the richest 1% of human beings produce over 86 times more carbon emissions than the poorest 50%. This is projections by 2030, and the COP26 event is talking about all this. So as you read social media and you read these stats, I could imagine it could create some rage.
It does.
Because the inequality is just widening in enormous ways. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, full disclosure, I'm a capitalist. I believe that capitalism is what works best for these animals called human beings. We are not ants. We are hardwired for incentives, whether it's an incentive for love, for money, for fame, for power. By virtue of being human, we are governed by incentives. And I believe that capitalism is the economic form that draws out the most from us. That said, capitalism isn't just one thing. It can't and shouldn't just be the Milton Friedman-esque idea that if you earn $1, every single dollar has to go to shareholders. And some of the data that you gave, I think really draws that out. I'll give you another piece. If you go back if you go back 40 years, if economic inequality had stayed at the same from the time that I was in third grade to today, it would mean that 50 trillion with a T, $50 trillion would have gone to workers at the 90th percentile in the US or below. That's $1,100 per month per worker. Now think about how much less rage there would be if there were $1,100 per month per worker earning at that level. I'm not one of those people. I got to say, I don't think every billionaire is a policy failure. You know, I am actually not in favor of dragging these guys into the square and hanging them up in a noose. I don't. But what I do think is wrong is when a single FedEx driver pays more in federal taxes than Federal Express. I do think it's wrong when a single 17-year-old barista making minimum wage pays less in federal taxes than Starbucks. And I'm going to put the I into this. I'm going to own up to this. I think it's wrong that I probably pay less as a percentage of my income in federal taxes than my 20-something-year-old research assistants.
Wow.
Now, yeah,
Wow.
because the money
Sure.
I make, Vala, is a function of the appreciation
Yep.
of my assets as opposed to what gets direct deposited in my accounts every 2 weeks.
Yep.
All of this is legal. FedEx is not breaking the law. Starbucks is not breaking the law. I'm not breaking the law. What we do have to do, though, is we've got to create a little bit more equilibrium. And this isn't about raising taxes. All of us 99% of America could pay less taxes. It's about changing some of the taxes to create a global minimum tax. It's about taking the race from the bottom.
A global minimum tax is what you said?
Yes. Yes.
The OECD is working on this, right?
That's exactly right. So right now, people pay 0% taxes because if you have the lawyers and the accountants, you just offshore everything.
But I love Dublin, Ireland. Come on. Don't take me out of my Dublin, Ireland
I
environment.
think OECD is proposing a 15% minimum. And
that's right.
With some exceptions
like
for Ireland.
but it's a lot.
No, it's lower than the United States. 15% is lower than the United States. So this doesn't hurt a single American in terms of what real Americans pay. What it does is it says, yes, you cannot take this company of yours and headquarter it in the Canary Islands. You cannot put it in the Caymans.
Tenerife is a great vacation spot. What are you talking about? No, but hey, look, I'm a free market capitalist. I do agree with some of your ideas here, and we can vehemently disagree on some of the other ones. But I think there is some really interesting shifts that are going on, right, in terms of how that distribution occurs, how people see opportunity, where people feel like those opportunities are being given, and I think it's good to have an opportunistic view. I mean, if we really truly get from here to the Star Trek economy, like how does that happen? Like, no one ever tells us, we never get the story on, what wars were fought to get to the point where I could just pursue my happiness and people pay for everything. Right. So there's a lot of interesting things. And when we get to John and the world of the metaverse, maybe that's where it happens, right? Your UBI occurs somewhere. I mean, something else happens somewhere else, right? We make money in the creator economy, and a lot of these awesome things could happen. So, but hey, I wanted to touch upon something really interesting. You had a very interesting stat here that you've traveled to more than 100 out of 196 countries. And I think that global perspective is really important because how people work, how people act, how people think, like what people's values, what they cherish. I mean, that's really, really important. So how did that really shape your perception of us in the US and what we might take for granted or not take for granted or understand our perception around the world?
Yeah, look, I grew up a public school kid from the coal-filled hills of West Virginia, and then traveling to more than 100 of the world's 196 countries. Obviously, it changed my view of things. And I would say overwhelmingly positively, because first of all, I see a lot of what has benefited the United States in decades past is now spreading around the world. Global life expectancy just during my life has gone from 58 to 72. That means that there are more markets around the globe, and there's more wealth and there's more well-being around the world. So I'm one of those people who I actually push back strongly against the idea that globalization is a negative thing. I think that people who think that globalization is negative are taking a very insular view, and they're saying the 330 million Americans matter, but 8 billion people who live elsewhere don't. What I do say though is part of a takeaway for Americans. I'll say two things. I say, first of all, I think we can actually learn a lot from other countries. Sometimes Americans forget we were born with one mouth and two ears, and we sometimes reverse that ratio. I think that some of what we want to do, right?
Love it.
Stronger worker protections, a more equitable distribution of capital, things like we can learn lessons from entrepreneurs in the Nordics. We can learn if we want government to work better, Ray. I think there's a lot we can learn from Singapore and other countries about how they've organized their governmental functions. The other thing that I've learned that informs my view, which does bring some urgency to the writing that I do, is I'm seeing now when we think about quote unquote developing world markets, it used to be the case in the 80s and 90s and beginning of the 21st century that people would send work there because it was quote cheaper.
Yep.
Now the labor in Taiwan and South Korea and India and Eastern Europe, it's not about it being cheaper, it's about it being equal to or better than the labor in the United States. So part of what I see, having traveled in more than 100 countries, is the rest of the world has got this sort of hunger, this real focus on it, this energy. Like if you go to Seoul, it's crazy. The startup ecosystem and the hunger for knowledge and development that they have. I view that as an overwhelmingly positive. But it does say to me, particularly in the kinds of communities that I grew up in West Virginia, we don't get our act together in education, we're going to be left behind by some of these folks. So there is an imperative.
Yeah, how do we create those opportunities for someone in Charleston, West Virginia?
And this is my final question to you. I'm a student in Professor Ross's class at the oldest university in the world, and I want to make sure that I walk away not feeling indifference, wanting to participate, having skin in the game. What do you tell your students? How do you encourage the young minds of the future? And maybe, like we said, your 19-year-old and my 18-year-old, they're already there. But what do you emphasize and re-emphasize to your students to ensure that rage is fueled by optimism and wanting to make the world a better place?
So part of it, a lot of it has to go with the concept of risk. For people who are young and in college, I tell them, when you get later in life, you don't regret your mistakes. You regret the chances you didn't take. I tell my students, you make mistakes of commission, not of omission. It makes me think of, a lot of people who aren't happy with their lives. They live in this, it's sort of a gray twilight. The way that Roosevelt said it, he said, it's far better to dare mighty deeds, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in a gray twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. So for those young folks, I tell them to live loud, bring a little punk rock to your life, take the big risks. I think failure is a synonym for, I think failure in many respects is a synonym for learning. So I just say, if you've got to make mistakes of commission rather than omission. I'm going to give you a lot of technical knowledge. I'm going to teach you a lot of things, but the sort of cultural and psychological approach we have to take is one that says, if the world's going to look more like Star Trek than like Mad Max, it's going to be because I shaped the world in that way.
I love it. I'm going to send my kids to Bologna Business School.
I think we need to take
Professor
that class,
Ross in my life.
I think we should just go take that class and go visit.
There you go. On that. Either that or you can read this.
Or read The Raging 20s. We're here with Alec Ross, author of The Raging 2020s and distinguished visiting professor. You can follow him on Twitter at ALECRJROSS. Thanks a lot for being on the show. This has been wonderful.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Congrats on a great book. Wow. That was awesome. Great advice.
All right. We needed an hour on that.
Yeah. It's every one of our guests. When we're done, we're like, we didn't have enough time. So let me quickly jump into our next amazing guest, David Hassell, CEO, co-founder of 15Five. David is a serial entrepreneur and presently founder and CEO of 15Five, a SaaS company focused on helping managers and CEOs and to get insight from their people that they need to be highly effective and to build great teams and organizations. 15Five was named by TSR as the best HR software of 2020, and G2 recognized 15Five the 17th fastest growing product of 2020. David formerly served as president of the San Francisco chapter of Entrepreneur Organization an international network of entrepreneurs who have each have businesses with annual revenues in excess of $1 million. David was named by Forbes magazine the most connected man you don't know in Silicon Valley, who was also featured by Forbes as an expert on entrepreneurship. He's been also featured on CNN, Fast Company, Wall Street Journal, Wired, all the major tech and business media. You can follow David on Twitter at DHassell, DHassell. Welcome, David, to DisrupTV.
Thank you. Great to be here, guys.
Great to have you.
Hey, we're really excited to have you here. I've been reading your blog post. There's one that was funny. Management by Weekly Check-In is the new wandering around. I mean, some great stuff you're popping out there. Really congratulations on all the stuff that you're doing. Something's happening. Something's changing, and you're chronicling this. This is really talking about where hybrid work is happening, and it's not just the leadership, it's not just the training, it's not just the cultural rituals. Let's just start there. Set the scene of what's going on, what everybody's feeling, but can't fully yet describe.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, I had a thesis that the kind of convergence of the demographic wave moving through society with these younger generations of workers with different mindsets and how they think and act, and really the first truly digital native generation, combined with ubiquitous technology, mobile devices that allow you to work from anywhere, was going to reshape the workforce. And I thought that actually what we're experiencing right now is going to happen a lot faster than it did. COVID was I think the accelerant of that trend, and really a secular trend that I've been tracking for a decade. And it's in a way thrown us, probably 5 to 10 years into the future. And the way that it did that is actually broke a lot of beliefs. So there were loads and loads of CEOs who I talked to who just didn't believe in remote or hybrid work. They said, no, we all have to be together. Remote work doesn't actually work. And then 2 weeks into COVID, they were all saying like, oh, wow, it actually works. They were forced to do it. And it broke down all these belief systems. What people didn't expect was the emotional and psychological impact it was going to have on all the workers. And so now you've had all these chief HR officers and chief people officers who've been scrambling over the last year and a half to completely retool how they think about employee engagement, performance management, retention. I know you guys have talked about this, the great attrition, which is also the great attraction for companies who have great offers for employees, but it's also the great reshuffling. Everybody, so many people have woken up and said, wait a minute, maybe this isn't what I want for my life. Maybe I want to live somewhere else. Maybe I want to do a different kind of work. And so we've had this just so much turmoil, but I think, most of it is really a silver lining in terms of where we're going in the future.
How much of this experience we've had the last 20 months in terms of a decentralized, for many, many months, digital only, and now perhaps a digital first engagement model, how much of this is permanent behavior? Do you anticipate that folks are going to be in the office on average a couple times a week, 3 times a week, or not at all? I mean, this great resignation, the fact that there are 11 million open jobs, and if you are still a CEO who doesn't believe that remote work works, you're not going to be able to recruit the very best talent. Because many of these folks have left, like San Francisco, to be waterfront somewhere south at 1/4 the expense and working for employers that frankly don't care where they work.
Exactly.
So talk to us about take us down the road the next 5-10 years and what we need to do as business leaders to really ready our companies and organizations for lasting behavior post-pandemic.
Yeah, well, the cat's out of the bag, I think, as you had mentioned. Great talent is realizing, well, if you're not going to give me an offer, someone will. I'll go live where I want to live, and so
that
if
would
you
never
want to
happen.
Right? We had 50 people in an office in San Francisco before when COVID happened, and about a year later there were 14 left. That's how many of our team had scattered across the country.
So didn't just leave the office, left the city.
No, left the city.
We
had people moved to Western Colorado, to Montana, just all over.
Clean air, beautiful streams and mountains.
Why not? Exactly. And so we were a little bit ahead of the trend. We had always believed in remote work and employee choice, and the the benefit of having hubs where people can come together, because some people do work better in offices, right? But some people, like myself, actually work better in a home office and visiting an office periodically. And so we had built our company as a remote first company with a 50-person office in San Francisco, another 50 in Raleigh, North Carolina, 20 people in New York, and 2 offices in Europe where people could convene. And I think that really is the new model. And what I'm hearing consistently from, and the reason being is, as we mentioned, companies have already started to recruit outside of the geographic areas. And so many of them, just in the last year and a half, because of all the turnover, now have a significant percentage of employees who are not in whatever their previous headquarters were. So even if they did want to reconvene everybody, you're going to have a percentage of the population that's now not there. And so now the challenge leaders are going to have is, how do we not create 2 different classes of citizens in our organizations? How do we not have it be that if you're coming into the office 1, 2, 5 days a week, whatever your choice is, that doesn't give you an advantage over everybody else? And I think the answer really is that you have to think about your organization as a remote first company, and then bring in the hubs as collaboration spaces to give people places to work together, because human contact really is really important. And it doesn't have to be every single day.
Absolutely. I was in my Salesforce office for the first time in 20 months this week. And I got to tell you,
feel good? Did it feel good?
It felt great.
Felt great, right?
Yeah. I was with 50/60. It was a leadership event, and the rigor and the process of just getting access to the office, scheduling shifts, and locking doors with your phone after you check in, and the social distancing, the plastic barriers and signs. So I felt completely safe. I keep hearing every company is a health company now. I actually saw my company transform to a place where safety and healthy of the stakeholder is priority 1. And then once you get through that, you have to get tested. You have to get real time testing, and we would only be cleared when the physician said you could pass through the doors. But once you got there, we're hugging each other, it's high-fiving and eating without masks. For the day, I forgot that, what we had gone through. It was such a delightful experience. But
now, do you want to do that commute every day?
For me, it's only a couple of miles. So yes, I don't mind. I don't mind. But no. To be honest with you, the average adult in the U.S. pre-pandemic had 51-minute commute. So
isn't that crazy?
You're losing precious
hours
time.
And hours, yes.
Yeah, hours and hours.
Yes.
So,
but it was
and podcasts, though. Podcasts are good for those. And
They've got a special podcast room for Vala there. Though,
yeah, they do. They built me a studio, so I do miss that. Yes.
So, but hey, but related to that, I mean, we're seeing that a lot of the folks that were hired during the last 18 months were the most likely to leave. You're seeing some cases where you've got managers that aren't sure how to actually operate in this new type of environment. And so what can we do to improve the employee-employer relationship, the manager-team relationship, right? I mean, there seems to be a lot of things that are missing because we've got new conditions or we've got changing conditions. And so what have you been seeing? What are you suggesting to you and your clients?
Yeah, and I think I think it's important to understand that there's actually a different skill set required to manage effectively remotely than there was managing when you're in an office. Mainly because a lot of the things that you need to now do intentionally happen by matter of course when you're sharing space with somebody. And so, making sure you have great practices of checking in on periodic basis in a way that's not micromanaging, but that's getting information. And so there are ways to automate that. Obviously, that's what we do. Our product is all focused on that, helping managers manage remotely. But then there's also the skill set of understanding how to get a read on how your people are doing emotionally and psychologically. We're not advocating that every manager should become a psychologist. That's not the point. But we actually do need better skills of human connection and empathy.
Yes.
And one of our core values in 15.5 is cultivate relational mastery. That's never been more important because we are not in the, it's actually fascinating. In one way, we've lost the intimacy of being together. In another way, we're all now in each other's homes. The three of us, we've got cameras into our houses. And I have an 8-year-old son he ran into an all hands meeting buck naked. And I felt like that guy from the BBC interview, from 2 years ago when that was a scandal. But now I've seen that 8 times now in other people's houses. And so, there is this there's a real opportunity here, I think, for managers to get the coaching and education to be great leaders and to understand not just, hey, are my people getting their work done, but where do you want to go? Like what's important to you? Because people, you'll often hear that adage, people leave managers, not companies. And I think there's some truth to that. And people leave when they don't feel like they're having an opportunity to grow, right? Certainly salary and stock and all the other things and benefits are all very important for somebody to have as table stakes. But that's not the thing that's actually going to keep them in the end, right? Are they working with great people on something that matters? Do they feel connected to the purpose, right? And do they feel like they have an opportunity to grow, and are they cared for? And managers need to understand how to meet all of those needs.
You're clearly a successful CEO. Your company's crushing it. And it's largely due to companies that have hired caring, skilled managers who want to continuously improve and career path and get the best outcomes in terms of all the stakeholders that they touch, employees, customers, partners, communities. When you look at these incredibly successful, fast-growing companies that are your clients, that have done incredible work learning your methodology and partnering with 15Five, what's common denominator in these leaders? What are some of the 4 or 5 characteristics that they exhibit to you where they're going to be successful because they clearly match the ethos of your company and your vision, and as long as they follow your recipe, they are going to have success?
Yeah, I think it starts with leaders who get that they don't have a company without their people, and they don't have a company without the best people. And so,
my God, such common sense. Such
common sense.
Yeah.
And then if you believe in that, then it's like, well, now we're all distributed. How do I even get a read on what's going on? So you have to implement listening technology that's done on a periodic cadence. Whether we do our engagement survey 3 times a year. We just had our results come out 3 days ago. Fascinating things. Some of the areas we put attention on have improved dramatically. Some areas have declined, and we need to listen and respond. So it's really about being responsive to understanding, are my people set up for success? Then it's about manager coaching and development, because again, the manager has it's a very high leverage point in the organization, and an undue losing my train of thought, but they have massive influence over the outcome of the employee base. So are you supporting the managers, and are they set up for success? The problem is, historically, you go back to the IBM days and people got great manager education, right? And it was like a big thing. More historically, what would happen is someone's really, really good as an individual contributor, and then like, oh, great, that person's due for a promotion. Let's make them a manager. Not everybody should be a manager, and then they throw them in there without any coaching or training. Right. And so, putting a lot of attention on the coaching and development of the management layer, especially first-time managers, ensuring they have, education, a good coach, and the technology to support them.
Absolutely. And David, just to follow up, what's the hardest thing to teach to young new managers? Maybe I asked the question, do you hire for EQ and train for IQ, or at least use EQ as a requirement in terms of whether you decide to promote someone? If they don't get along with people, giving them people responsibilities just doesn't make sense. But I often see that happen, and I always wonder why they ignore the fact that this person doesn't really like people.
I like the way that you rephrase the question and led it there, because I think you're onto something. EQ is table stakes. Whether you think you can train for it or you find someone who's already have it, it's probably an easier path than the latter. That is very important. And in fact, actually, I think Gallup had come out with some research that said when they just surveyed, and looked at the analysis of what makes a great manager, they said something like only like 10 or 12% of the population is actually, kind of innately right to be managers. Yeah. And so there are some characteristics that you should be looking for in advance. And if someone wants to go on the path and maybe they're lacking in those skills, then great. But you have to go in with your eyes open and make sure they have the support to develop those skills.
Great answer. Yeah, I agree. 100%.
All right, I'm going to ask you something totally off the wall, just because you've done crazy things. So we need a new version of Davos, and you're the one to go create it. And I'm asking you to go create it. I will join you to go.
That would be great.
Let's do it in Maui, like Mai Tai. Let's do it somewhere like people want to be, in an infrastructure that people can handle, right? In a conversation. Let's do it in Puerto Rico. Go help folks out there, right? Like something where we can actually reshape the conversation that is much more relevant to the average individual, right? Much more individual to a startup, right? There's something there. I mean, like
I love it.
You don't like narrow, snowy, cold venues?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
I think there is, you know, what I will say is I think there is real power in community around a shared purpose and core purpose with a certain ethos. And you get different flavors from these different communities, whether it's Davos or, you know, TED or Summit Series or even Mai Tai, as you mentioned, and they all have different purposes. But I do love that. I do love that stuff. I see the power and potential in it for sure.
I mean, we've interviewed so many people on DisrupTV that we could actually create a whole network to actually go do that and have a really pretty interesting event. And so, you know, I'll catch up with you offline if that's something you're interested in. And I'm happy to put some sweat equity and time and call the right people that can actually convene something, because it would be fun. And I think we need something like that, and cover employee experience, cover where technology is going, where the politics are happening, what's happening, economic trends, and something fun like that. So
David, my last question, when you think about emerging technologies like machine learning and advanced analytics, technology, even embedded in NLP, where you can detect tone and sentiment. We had Anil Bushri, founder of Workday, on our show, and he talked about all the investments they're making in not only just predictive analytics in terms of predictions on retention, predictions on recruitment efforts, but even prescribing action to make sure you're targeting the right persona with cultural fit, competency, so on and so forth. It's fascinating discussion at a pioneer in this space, talking about the importance of AI. Talk to us where, as a CEO, you're thinking about your company as you build your innovation roadmap. Are there certain technologies that really excite you about, you know, guiding your clientele in even a more precise, intelligent, personalized manner that you do today?
Yeah, well, I think technology is always best when it augments our own kind of ethical constructs and our intuition and those kinds of things, where we're actually building technology that almost gives us superhuman abilities, but it's still us making the decisions. You have to be careful with some of the AI and ML of how it's designed and who it's designed by, because you don't want those things to introduce and amplify existing bias. So, but I think there's huge potential for those things for sure.
Terrific. Now, I just recently wrote about the importance of responsible AI and how you mature your practice, and ethical and humane use of software is going to be a challenge and an opportunity for all companies for the next decade, for sure. Ray,
this is wonderful. We're here with David Hassell, CEO and co-founder of 15Fi. Follow him on Twitter. We might go do something cool together at DHASSELL. Let me know. I definitely will follow up with you. So thank you so much for being on the show. Great. Thanks for pioneering it.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much. Pioneer CEO.
Lightning fast. Who do we have next that's lightning fast?
Oh my God. This has been awesome. I'm just sitting back here and listening to these guys, and I'm just going,
I've been told in the metaverse time goes a little bit slower, but I don't know. So let's
the time dilation in the metaverse is its own thing. But
awesome. We're here with John Westra, Virtual Innovation Officer. John has spent the last 3 decades studying emerging technologies. John was named number 3 virtual reality influencer worldwide by Analytica. John is a speaker, serial tech entrepreneur, currently writing Meta Republic, The Quest for Liberty in the Metaverse. John's current goal is to create real and virtual communities known for being great places to work and to be connected. Today, we're going to learn from John on the topics of augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and this term metaverse. You can follow John, a great follow on Twitter, at John_Westra, Westra. Welcome, John, to DisrupTV.
Thank you. Great to be here. Like I said, fabulous guests. It's just fun to be here listening to your prior guests and nodding my head, because so much of what they have been talking about feeds directly into this metaverse conversation. that we're having.
I'm just beaming because we do a fun guest like yourself, and we're so excited.
It's my favorite time of Friday. The first favorite hour, and as Ray alluded to after our first segment, we always when we do postmortem, we're like, we needed more than an hour. That 20-minute just is a blink in the real world, and perhaps even faster in the metaverse. What is the metaverse? And please, I have an 11-year-old son. Well, I was going to say explain it so that he understands, but he actually is more digital savvy than I am. So he probably is already in it.
All right. So the super simple explanation. And there are a lot of people, first of all, who want to own this thing. I mean, that's where we have to start, is saying that brands and influencers and, there's a lot of competition to own the metaverse. The metaverse is simply all of the virtual reality and augmented physical reality that we can experience that's interconnected and allows us to, utilizing head-mounted displays, be they VR goggles, be they AR glasses, see things that we have never seen before and connect in ways that we have never connected before. But the core of it is, it's everything that's virtual reality and augmented reality that we can experience in new ways.
So, John, about 5-6 years ago, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Vala. Vala loves the metaverse. He's ready to
go. Because eventually
it's exciting stuff.
We're going to have DisrupTV in the metaverse, Ray. And my avatar is always going to be clean shaven and handsome.
I was just thinking just a minute ago, I was thinking how, the next thing on the list is virtual Davos, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
there's no reason.
We need to create a metaverse virtual Davos.
Yeah, so my follow-up question is, we've been hearing Gartner for 5-6 years talk about digital twin and how organizations, the enterprise needs to create a digital twin for better planning, better simulation, better orchestration and choreography of resources. Perhaps we would be better dealing with the supply chain chaos that we're in if we had better insights with precision, because the beauty of digital is, once you're there, you can measure more things. Do you see an immersive experience with Metaverse, where now when you do have a digital twin of your organization, you are now have immersive experiences where you are conducting and orchestrating inside that digital twin as much as you do in the physical entity?
Well, absolutely. I think number one, anytime you have a virtual digital twin, the amount of friction that you have to try new things. That was one of the comments, that was made earlier by Alec, which is awesome. He's encouraging his students to just go out there and try and fail. Well, when you're going out there and trying in a digital twin virtual version of, say, a building, you can experiment without breaking things, without, disrupting employees, without, all of the things that make it almost impossible to try new things from a physical infrastructure standpoint in a physical plant. So huge advantages. Factors of 100 or 1,000 in terms of cost savings and how quickly you can iterate, which we all know iteration is, super key to success in anything you do. So in this digital twin environment, if I can iterate 100 times at 1,000 times less cost, why would I not do that?
While maintaining business continuity. Sure.
Absolutely. And then afterwards, utilize that same digital twin technology to help me manage the physical infrastructure, whether that's logistics. If I've got somebody who's a supply chain analyst and they are looking at that supply chain on, in using AR, and they're seeing that entire supply chain out in front of them, and they can literally take pieces of that digital twin supply chain and move them around and see in real time what the impact is going to be. It's huge.
It's amazing.
If you can tell, I'm excited about this stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, and those simulations are great, right? Because you can like visualize par values, you can do restocks, you can reset your smart contracts, you can rethink about, your dynamic pricing levels, right? And you can start to think about, hey, what's the impact, on a couple scenarios, like, maybe we do give cash discounts or we pay more to get supplies in place for our high margin products. I mean, there's a lot of fun simulations there. And I think we're just touching upon some of those use cases here, and they're probably a lot more
number
use
3,
cases.
by the way, in terms of what are the top 3 use cases.
Go ahead. Let's go.
Simulation and design is my number 3.
That's your number 3. What's number 1 and 2?
Training and education.
Okay, sure.
Training and education.
We saw even a couple of years ago Lowe's using headsets to show craftsmen how to, learn about installation, optimization, break fix. So
and this is not foreign to you either, Vala. I mean, Salesforce, you guys have been on the leading edge of this stuff. In fact, I grabbed a quote. Anytime, anywhere access to the training and experiences that enrich the work and the human factor of their connections. And that was out of your Ignite team.
Sure. Thank you.
And
we didn't plan this, by the way. I just want to
no. But that's a great example of any company. And in fact, this is a big, I'm a big SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats guy. For corporations, this is a big SWOT moment, because one of the things that the metaverse is going to deliver is for smaller organizations that are nimble, that embrace this technology, because the cost of some of these things that they couldn't do before is now available to them virtually. The ninjas in the business community are going to absolutely rule in the metaverse, and size does not matter.
Absolutely.
So when we think about the layers, right? We've been looking at this. I mean, sometime this weekend, like the team's going to get together and we're finally going to put together our metaverse research into one coherent research paper and report.
Nice. Looking forward to the read.
And we're thinking about where we are. I mean, we look at the experience layers. I mean, there's definitely experience layers, and there's worlds that are out there. There are definitely things that are going to happen with transactions, payments, and contracts, and how things get settled. There are definitely things in the Web 3.0 infrastructure that's sitting on the back end. And then we have creator economies, and we have people that are popping up in DeFi, decentralization markets that are there, right? And all these things are coming together, and it's can be confusing, and especially in the enterprise. I mean, who do you think some of the winners are? Like, who's kind of ahead at this market? And I do think it's like 1997. Go ahead.
No, I was just say, first of all, John Radoff did us all an amazing favor by illustrating those 7 layers, because one of the biggest challenges we always have is, how do we talk about this using a common set of language and terms and et cetera? And the metaverse is really snaky about that. So this is great.
Yeah, no. Radoff was great. And when he put that together, I mean, it started that conversation that was there. And I think he really helped. And then as we take it to the enterprise level, it's a little bit different, right? But who are some of those winners? And I know, knowing that we're like in 1997 of the internet here, talking about the metaverse, like search engines haven't been built yet, right?
Right.
We haven't figured out, which browser is going to win, right? Like which headset, right? We get these kind of analogies that are there, but who's leading? Who do you see up there?
Well, I think clear infrastructure winners and really bottom of the stack. You have companies like T-Mobile and Starlink. We were talking earlier. Your guests were talking about the decentralized workforce, and that is absolutely a part of this metaverse discussion, because the tools that people are starting to use and gaining steam with. Walmart's a great example, early adopter, using VR headsets to onboard employees, even when those employees were at home with, the whole COVID thing going on, saw dramatic improvements in how quickly they could onboard people. But what we're missing with a lot of these things is, how do we connect them?
Yes.
So when we see organizations like T-Mobile, leader in 5G, when we see Starlink, another one of Elon's companies, enabling this distributed workforce to literally be anywhere. But at the same time, in the metaverse, now I have that person put on a VR headset, and they are now working with colleagues virtually in a room or in whatever the location is, as if they were there. And we're seeing more ripples of this now with the new Meta rebranding and where Facebook is headed now, Meta, with that.
Yeah, I mean,
big winners in terms of infrastructure. I like the T-Mobiles of the world. I love 5G specifically, if you want to make it a little broader. 5G, Starlink. Big losers, cable and satellite are going to continue to, because they can't offer the same connectivity for the metaverse that wireless, no wired infrastructure does.
Yeah, I mean, I think about 5 years ago, none of us were talking about Zoom or TikTok. And
Sure.
So who's the next big player with that creates excitement and momentum in this construct of metaverse? I listened to Mark Zuckerberg give an interview this week, and he said, Google doesn't own its own internet. Microsoft doesn't have its own internet. Facebook doesn't have its own internet. It's just the internet. So we're not going to have companies owning different metaverses, and we have to work on interoperability so that your digital avatar can jump from one application to another, one domain to another, and seamlessly live in this world, not just your own little village. So I thought about, when all this movement on distributed autonomous organization, the DAO movement, the Web 3.0 movement, the tokenization NFT movement, and these creators who are in this world where you don't even need marketing. Like, I don't even know if we need marketing in the future. They have skin in the game. The users own a piece of the metaverse, and therefore, that's the best kind of marketing you could ever have.
And that ties in
parts that the biggest players in metaverse we may not know them. There may be just a few guys funded by Andreessen Horowitz working on the side that might come out of this incredible creator economy that really is not even the first inning. You're hearing the national anthem, or you're outside buying peanuts. I don't even think the game has started.
The Blue Angels
it's
have gone by.
It's HP. This is that analogy. It's HP in the garage.
It is. It's
HP in the garage.
It's Amazon
in the digital twin.
The year after the web was launched by Sir Tim Berners-Lee. It's it's not Google, the 21st search engine that came out in '98. This to me is really new. I mean, the People $69 million NFT sale is what opened all our eyes, at least my eye. And this was only April, May of this year. Before that, non-fungible tokens, whatever.
You don't want to talk. You don't want to talk to me about crypto. I just
yeah. But this tokenization is going to play a key role in this metaverse because again, it's a creator economy. It's like companies were Web 2.0. It's now, it's owned by the people. But in any event, it's right. Yeah. Go ahead.
And in your wheelhouse, it's Metaverse as a service.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not just software as a service. It's Metaverse as a service. It's all of those collections of moving parts that smart people are going to put together and say, hey, you don't have to own this. You can rent this. You can, here's the tool set. We're going to make it available, and it's, $49 a month. Go.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's going to happen is we're going to walk in a meeting like this, and boom, we get a little holograph that will show up. That will be like you, John. Hey, what's going on? We gathered around, be able to do that.
You've seen my business cards.
I've seen your business cards. We're going in between. We're going to traverse between the digital worlds and the analog worlds, and that's kind of the exciting part, right? I mean, at any point in time, on demand, you'll be able to jump in, jump out, engage, do something differently, and I think that's kind of where we're headed. But I mean, what do you think in 2022? Are we going to get there? What's the big announcement other than people changing their names?
Right. Yeah. I think 2022 brings us right up against all of these long-awaited expectations for Apple. They are going to,
True.
right. And we've been hearing about it. Okay, do I get AR glasses this year, next year? 2022 is really going to be a watershed, moment. And one of the things that I'm very bullish on is the entertainment industries embracing the metaverse, and that's everything from professional sports to the classic cinema experience that we've all been enjoying for however long. The streaming companies, and again, you already look at companies that are working together. In a full disclosure, my T-Mobile subscription comes with Netflix. Those things are bundled together. Netflix has already been on the acquisition train and doing things where I think we're going to have these metaverse experiences stream to our next generation devices that allow us to be anywhere, anytime, enjoying the entertainment, be that sports or whatever else. And that's 2022.
Absolutely. Wow.
Wow.
Great.
John with the last word, man.
That would be great. No, I just, to be able to have even referees on a football field, basketball court,
there you go.
Wear the smart glasses. So you're literally running with the players, even better than a courtside seat, which I can't afford in Boston. Celtics 2 seats, courtside's about $2,000.
And when that player makes that amazing, now I'm a Major League Soccer guy, and it's so when that Boston, when there's that amazing 30-yard out, full left foot into the top back corner of the net, suddenly not only am I seeing that from the goalie's perspective as he watches that ball sail past his fingertips, but I also have an opportunity to purchase the NFT of that moment.
Unbelievable.
And that NFT
trade it immediately.
NFT, that bubble of experience is now for sale, and it's completely unique, and I can own it.
When Brady last week threw his 600th touchdown to Evans catches it and throws it into the stand. Then he realizes, oh my God, this is $1 million football I just gave to a fan.
$1 million football I just threw away to a fan. Yeah.
The fan was naive enough to hand it back because immediately Sotheby's said this is at least a $600,000 ball. But that was a physical ball. You're right. All of those moments captured, and for the fantasy football fanatics or soccer or basketball to be able to create those micro moment NFTs, is endless revenue stream, new business models.
I think the NFL Players Association could have taken that and donated as a charity ball right there. I mean, you got so many opportunities.
There you go. And it's not just
take the NFT of
and it's not just at the professional level. I mean, it's things, and I think this is one of the big consumer breakouts when we're talking about the metaverse. Is if I have a child who's playing soccer, and now instead of realistically, instead of capturing that game just on a phone or etc., I have a volumetric capture of that field because the cost has come down so much. Now I can relive that experience of my kid's game over and over and over, whether that's a birthday party. I mean, I've got multiple 360 cameras, and for the last 6 years, I have been bringing them to all of my family events.
I'm opening up my holodeck addiction clinics now. We're here with John Westra, Virtual Innovation Officer. You can follow him on Twitter at John_Westra. More importantly, hey, thank you so much for being here, sharing your views on the metaverse. And
John, you were terrific. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Have an awesome day, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
You so much.
See you in the green room.
Ray, we need to NFT our 300th episode or our 1,000th.
Well, let's work on that. We'll get a team on that, and I don't know. We should find a charity. Let's go find some place to donate that too. Have some fun with it.
It's definitely a tremendous opportunity for new business models and revenue streams. Our next, talking about disruption, We're going to continue this dialogue next week because we have one of the foremost authorities on both business disruption and personal disruption with our first guest, Whitney Johnson, founder and CEO at Disruption Advisors, one of the Thinkers 50 longtime participant, and our first guest on DisrupTV 5.5 years ago. So we're close to 800 interviews. Whitney was our first guest. She'll always have a special place in our hearts because of that. Because back then we only had 3 viewers, Ray, me, and the guest.
And some person on Meerkat, maybe.
Yeah. And now it's like 50,000. So Pat White, CEO of Bitwave, and Sarah Stein Greenberg, author of Creative Acts for Curious People, How to Think, Create, and Lead in Unconventional Ways. So get your popcorn, fasten your seatbelt. Episode 256 is going to be amazing next week. Ray, closing thoughts on the raging 2020s, the great resignation and how skilled managers play a key role in retaining talent, and the metaverse.
We're at the crux of the next wave. We're not sure what it looks like. We're trying to describe it. We're seeing it in different ways, from how we work, where we work, what we do, what people are passionate about, how they're able to live their lives how they want to. People are taking more personal control. People are rejecting authoritarianism in different ways. People are thinking about what's going on next with technologies. The metaverse is another way to kind of free us up into new worlds and new opportunities. I'm bullish. I'm really bullish about the next decade. And I think, Alec's right. I mean, we're watching too much dystopian TV it's great for Netflix for the last 18 months, but hey, I mean, the life is a lot more optimistic than most people believe. And I think it's up to us to make it so.
I love what he said at the end. The future is created by the optimists.
Totally, you got to be an optimist, man.
100%. But pragmatic optimism,
Yes.
you want to be honest with yourself and everyone around you. And if there's a need to course correct, but always try to do better. And I think he also said the true enemy is indifference. You have to make sure that you participate. And if you want to see something better, get in the game. And the change starts with you. Okay. Thanks, Ray. We need another hour for the show. It's hard to ask our guests to hang out with us for 2 hours on a Friday afternoon. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.